Hello, Tidewater. Hello, Hampton Roads. It's a pleasure to be back with you for another season of Virginia Opera Previews. And let me tell you about Verdi's Falstaff. Here's something you have to understand. Of course, anytime that I come in to chat with you about an upcoming Virginia opera production, we usually do masterpieces. We don't do a lot of new experimental opera. We're not that kind of opera company, so we do the good ones, and I come here all full of enthusiasm, making a wonderful argument for the opera, being an advocate for the opera and for the art form. You wouldn't expect me to come in here and say, hey, folks, I'm lukewarm about this next opera. I'd give it a miss if I were you. Skip this one, come to the next one. Well, first of all, I would be unemployed very quickly. But also, I do love opera. That's why I'm here. But Falstaff is different. Let me make this blanket statement just so you understand where I'm coming from. Falstaff is my favorite opera. It is more than that. It is my favorite piece of music. It is more than that. It is my favorite work of art, encompassing novels, poetry, sculpture, painting, theater, movies. And it is more than that. Next to my wife and child, Falstaff is my favorite thing in this world. I have loved it passionately and found it the most life-affirming, surefire way to raise my spirits since I was 18 years old, and that was 43 years ago. I know it very well, and in a way, this broadcast is frustrating for me because I want you to love it too. I want you to know it the way I know it and love it the way I love it. And that's not going to happen in a 60-minute program in which I blather on and play little snippets for you. The most we can hope for, I guess, is that when I'm done talking today, you will at least understand why Glenn Winters loves Falstaff, and I'll have to be content with that and hope that over time you will explore this opera, get to know it, and understand why it is the great thing that it is. And I'll start by saying that the reason I prefer Falstaff to all other operas, including Verdi's other masterpieces, including Mozart's operas, and if you've listened to these broadcasts in the past, you know that I revere and adore Mozart's operas. Falstaff is greater to me because it is the most flawless work of art that I know. I've known it for 43 years. I find nothing to criticize, no weaknesses in orchestration, vocal writing, the libretto, the pacing, the dramatic flow. It is as close to perfect as any human endeavor can hope to achieve. And that's not even true of Mozart. I'm sorry. As much as I love The Marriage of Figaro, which is my second favorite opera, just between you and me, I think that Act 4 is about 10 minutes too long. When Barberina comes out talking about her little song about she lost her pin, I'm thinking, yeah, get off the stage. Not so in Falstaff. It is perfect. Now, why isn't it the most popular opera? Well, it's not the kind of opera that you can just sit back, close your eyes, ignore the super titles, ignore the libretto, and just listen to the lovely arias. It is really about the words, because of course, it is based on Shakespeare. Well, my friends, if you take away the words from Shakespeare, what are you left with? You're left with nothing. So you really cannot love Falstaff unless you have the words in front of you, unless you come to see not only the wit of the words in Arrigo Boito's perfect, flawless libretto, but the way that the orchestra reflects the words, the way that Verdi sets them to clarify them and bring out the wit and enhance the wit. So it's not an easy listen just from the armchair perspective. But I'm going to help you figure all this out. Verdi loved Shakespeare as I love his opera Falstaff. Verdi didn't keep a Bible next to his bedside. He had a difficult relationship with the church. What he kept for reading material on his nightstand were 2 volumes, the Beethoven String Quartets and Shakespeare. And Arrigo Boito, when he made a project out of coaxing the elderly Verdi out of retirement to create more operas, he dangled the bait in front of him like a carrot on a stick that he knew that the maestro would not be able to resist, and that is Shakespeare, with those two great late masterpieces, Otello and now Falstaff. Boito, I usually give short shrift in these previews to the librettists because, in the end, an opera is the composer's work product. And very often the librettist is a hired hand more than an equal collaborator. But we do need to speak about what Boito did with Falstaff, because if you want a play about Falstaff to adapt, you're stuck with The Merry Wives of Windsor, written in 1599. And the problem with The Merry Wives is that, and may lightning not strike me for saying this, but it's not a very good play. It was written hastily on royal command from Queen Elizabeth I, who knew Falstaff, the character of Falstaff, from the previous plays in which he was a supporting role in the two Henry IV plays. And she bade, I guess is the past tense, Shakespeare to write a comedy about Sir John Falstaff in love. So you've got to use Merry Wives if you're going to write a play about Falstaff. But Shakespeare wrote this so hastily and with such little enthusiasm that instead of reproducing the great original character of Falstaff in all his complexity and originality from the Henry IV plays, he just made a stock Italian comedy about a foolish old man who thinks he's attractive to younger women and is made the butt of jokes. And Falstaff is a pale shadow of the previous incarnations of that character. So what Boito did was amazing. Now, who is Falstaff, in case you don't know? In Verdi's opera and in The Merry Wives, he is a knight. He is Sir John Falstaff. How he got knighted, we'll never know. As far as I'm concerned, he probably bought and paid for it, probably bribed somebody. He is elderly. He's getting on in years. Let's see, this is 2013. It's not PC to say someone is fat. He's rotund. Well, the Italian word is grosso. He's very grosso. Let's just say that, as Bill Cosby said about Fat Albert, buildings lose pieces of brick when he walks by. He is a glutton, obviously. He is a drunk, constantly drinking wine. Spiced mulled wine is his favorite. He's lecherous. He's a womanizer. He is a liar. He will lie and smile while he's doing it. He's a thief. He will pick your pocket and smile at you while he does it. He's unrepentant about any of his character flaws. He has no use for the social mores of conventional behavior that society demands of us if we want to be civilized. And yet we like him. We like him because he has the grace to be able to laugh at himself when he is made a fool of, and that happens quite often. Most of his nefarious schemes to con people and bilk people out of their money usually blow up in his face. And so that's the character that we want to see in Merry Wives, but he doesn't exist in Merry Wives. So Boito had the task of taking the best of Falstaff from the Henry IV plays and kind of pumping up that sad character in Merry Wives to make him a little more Falstaffian. Now, for instance, one of the great moments in Henry IV, and I can't go into the plots of those things, we'll run out of time, but Falstaff has a very famous speech about honor. This is one of the virtues for which he has no use. He reminds me of Mordred in Camelot, who sang that song about the 7 deadly virtues. That's rather Falstaffian of that show. There's a scene in Scene 5 of Act 5, rather, Scene 1 of King Henry IV, Part 1, in which Falstaff holds forth in a very cynical way about the concept of honor. He says, "Can honor set to a broken leg? No. Or an arm? No. Or take away the grief of a wound? No. Honor hath no skill in surgery, then? No. What is honor? A word. What is in that word? Honor. What is that honor? Air. A trim reckoning. Who hath it? He that died a Wednesday? Doth he feel it? No. Doth he hear it? No. 'Tis insensible, then. He has no use for honor. Well, you're Arrigo Boito. You're reading this speech and you think, yeah, that's the stuff. I want that in my opera. But the problem is that it doesn't transfer. Falstaff is a soldier, and in King Henry IV, he's speaking about honor in battle. Well, but in Merry Wives of Windsor, there is no army, there's no war going on, there is no battle, and he's decades past his soldierdom. So what you going to do? And this is where Boito shows his incredible craftsmanship. He takes the honor speech and applies it to a totally different dramatic context, and that is Falstaff in love. Falstaff has his eye on two respectable married ladies in the town of Windsor, Alice Ford and Meg Page. He has written each of them a mash note, a love letter, if you will, identical love letters, and he wants to have a little hanky-panky. He wants to have a little intimate, kissy-huggy time with each of these respectable married ladies. And he asks two of his drinking buddies, Bardolph and Pistol, if they will play mailman and deliver the letters. Well, Pistola rises up with his shoulders erect, and he says, "No, I cannot do that. I usually help you out, Sir John, but not this time. My honor forbids it." And that gives Boito the opening he needs to plug in a slightly tweaked and enhanced version of the honor speech. It's not an aria. Shakespeare doesn't give arias, he gives soliloquies, as you know. So Verdi honors this. He doesn't turn it into the sort of aria that Rigoletto, actually Rigoletto has soliloquies as well, that the Count de Luna might sing, or in one of the other operas. He sets it as a glorified, greatly enhanced recitative, and the orchestra becomes a character in this version of the soliloquy. When Falstaff says, "What is honor?" It's a word, una parola. And you'll hear the flutes in this next excerpt we'll hear play a little sequence of notes that show just how insignificant and trivial words are. And when Falstaff says, "What's in this word?" Air, l'aria che vola, air which just flies away. Again, the woodwinds play a swirling eddy of rapid notes which suddenly, poof, disappear up in the air like cigarette smoke dissipating in the atmosphere. It's absolutely brilliant. Here's a little bit of the honor speech from Act 1, Scene 1 of Verdi's Falstaff.
Questa parola c'è dell'aria che vola, bel costrutto. L'onore lo può sentir chi è morto, no, vive sol coi vivi, neppure, perché a torto lo gonfian le lusinche, lo corrompe l'orgoglio, lo ammorma le calunnie, e per me non ne voglio,
And for me, I'll have none of honor. No, no, says Falstaff. He's won the debate. The orchestra repeats the theme of those questions. Can honor fill your belly in a triumphant tutti? He has proved his argument and won again. Now, here's another reason that that Falstaff will never be the box office draw that Rigoletto and Traviata are. Rigoletto and Traviata will always outsell Falstaff at least 5-1 and maybe more. Because this is what you hear. It's what you hear from opera files, opera fans, casual listeners, even critics, even scholars and authors. And they're all dead wrong. They will say, well, but Falstaff, it doesn't have any melodies. It doesn't. Where are the great arias with those gorgeous melodic phrases that spin out and that you can hum? There's nothing you can hum in Falstaff. Not so, mon ami. When I was in the chorus of Falstaff at age 18 in a production at the Indiana University School of Music, I got this very recording that I'm playing for you this afternoon with Tito Gobbi as Falstaff. And I sat down and followed it with a libretto because I wanted to learn this opera that I was going to be singing in. And I thought the same thing. I thought, gosh, it's awfully talky. Where's the beautiful music? Where's the beautiful arias like Germain sings in La Traviata? This is what we think of as Verdi, a beautiful, long, burnished melodic line. And so forth. Now, that excerpt, which was just the beginning instance of a very long aria, you heard about 1/10 of it right there, if that much, that was 42 seconds. And that was a baritone solo from La Traviata, Act 2. All right, now let's hear a baritone solo from Falstaff, which is the entire complete number, and it's 29 seconds.
Ero sottile, 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 ero un miraggio, vago, leggero, gentile, gentile, gentile. Quello era il tempo del mio verde aprile, quello era il tempo del mio lieto maggio. Tanto ero svilzo e simile snello che sarei guizzato attraverso un anello. Quando ero paggio ero sottile, ero un miraggio, vago, leggero, gentile, gentile, gentile.
29 seconds for a complete solo for the singer. You see, what happens in Falstaff is it's quicker moving because comedy needs to never let you pause for breath. Comedy needs to go at breakneck speed. This is one of the first screwball comedies. Think of Marx Brothers, think of Bringing Up Baby, think of The Front Page. You never stop and have a long time to think about what's happening in those films. And it's the same with Falstaff. Everything has to move at lightning speed. So it's not that there are not melodies. Now, I'm about to play half a dozen or more from you to prove that Falstaff is chock full of melodies. That's what I learned from the conductor of that first production I was in 1970, the great Tibor Kozma, the late Tibor Kozma, who conducted at the Metropolitan. He was the maestro for that production, and he said, actually, Falstaff is nothing but melody. It has more melody than any other Verdi opera. The thing is that, take the Traviata aria we just heard, Di Provenza, that tune, and so forth. It's a long, leisurely melody, and you hear it 4 or 5 times during the course of the aria. By the end of the aria, you've got it memorized. You've heard it so often that's why people leave the theater humming Verdi's melodies. They hear them over and over. Same with La Donna Immobile and Rigoletto. In Falstaff, the melodies are of very high quality. There are hundreds and hundreds of them. You hear them once and never again. They go by in a flash. He doesn't develop them. He doesn't repeat them. But they're there. They really are. You just have to have your ears on. For instance, here's several little, I won't go into the exact, dramatic context and what the characters are saying, waste too much time on it. I want to play you a sequence of melodies. Act 1, Scene 1. Falstaff is telling his buddies about this beautiful woman he's got his eye on, Alice Ford. I ask you, wasn't that a melody? Do, 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 dee, do, 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 dee, do, 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 do. Yes, very singable. Nothing wrong with it. But guess what? You hear it in that moment, and for the rest of the 3 acts of the whole opera, you never hear it again. He's like a guy who's won Verdi is like a guy who's won the lottery. He's got bags full of gold coins, and as he drives down the street in his limo, he's flinging handfuls of them out into the street, just wasting them, not even investing them, not getting any interest out of them. In Act 1, Scene 2, we'll hear from Alice Ford. Now, Alice and her next-door neighbor, Meg, best friends, they have received identical MASH notes from Falstaff. And they quickly discover this, and they're laughing hysterically that this rotund, elderly fool, drunk, has got, trying to get a hot date with each of them with identical letters. So, for the benefit of the girls in the neighborhood, Alice does a dramatic reading of Falstaff's cheesy prose. That's a melody. It's a beautiful Italian opera melody that you'll never hear again. It's not an aria. It's not the beginning of an aria. It's not part of an aria. It's part of dialogue. And at the end, by the way, all the other ladies joined in with her on that last couple of words because they were delighting in the fact that Falstaff said, "A woman like you deserves a man of my masculine appeal." So they all sang masculine appeal together, trying not to laugh. Now, at the end of Alice's dramatic reading of this cheesy letter, she sings a kind of a phrase which is not only melodic, it's Verdi's DNA. It's his trademark. Verdi's trademark melodic style is that in moments of great, intense passion, he will write a melody for the vocalist that is in the shape of an arc. It will start very low, and as the feeling becomes more intense, it will climb to a high note, and then it will subside back down again. If you were making a graph of it, it would have the contour of an arch. Now, just to show you what I'm talking about, here's a serious example from his middle period opera Un ballo in maschera, with Amelia getting very emotional. There you have it. Now, that happens in Aida, it happens in Traviata, it happens in Forza del Destino. You name a Verdi opera, you'll find the big arch. All right, now, in Falstaff, one of the reasons that I love this opera and that I admire Verdi above all composers, He, at age 80, and keep in mind, when Falstaff debuts at La Scala in 1893, he is age 80. Friends, I hope I still recognize myself in the mirror at age 80 and can tie my shoes. He is willing to make fun of himself. He looks back on the highly dramatic, melodramatic operas that he wrote, like Rigoletto and the rest, and he's able to parody his own style. And that's what Alice is going to do here as she finishes the last line of the love letter. And may your face shine above the firmament, blah, 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 goes Falstaff in this letter. And as Alice reads it, she's going to sing one of these arch phrases. And think about these three things. Number one, it's a beautiful phrase. It's a perfect example of an arch-like melodic phrase by Verdi, so don't tell me there aren't melodies in Falstaff. Number two, it's a double parody. This is where it gets so cool with Falstaff, because number one, Alice is mocking Falstaff by using such an emotional style to read his cheesy letter. But also, number two, Verdi is mocking himself by giving a parody of this old-fashioned melodic style. Sounds like this. You're going to ask me, well, how do you know that he is mocking himself? Maybe that's just the style he likes. No. There are several examples of self-parody in Falstaff, and that is just one of them. Now, the next melody that I want to play for you, which unless you're deaf, you're going to agree, and you probably wouldn't be listening to the radio in that case. Unless you're deaf, you're going to agree with me that it's a lovely melody, is the love duet. Yes, there are lovers in Falstaff. These lovers, it's another reason that I love Verdi and that I love Falstaff. Think about the other lovers in the canon of Verdi operas. Otello and Desdemona. They're grown-ups, right? They're adult, mature couple. They have issues. He's always at war. She worries about him. He's jealous. They love each other, but love is hard. And he's going to wind up murdering her. How about Aida and Radames? Oh, yes, they love each other, but do they have a lot of fun together? Well, no, because she's a slave and he's captain of the enemy army and she's in love with the enemy, and it's heavy, it's doomed, it's heavy, it's grown-up stuff. All of Verdi's love affairs, they're passionate, but kind of, and they have moments of euphoria, but there's never any fun. It's hard to picture one of Verdi's guys going up to his girlfriend and saying, "Hey, sweets, how about a little kiss? Hey, want to go bowling?" Where is the joy and the fun of love? And actually, we get that with Mimi and Rodolfo initially. They're playful. Here's what I love about Falstaff. The lovers are children. A teenage boy, a teenage girl, sweet, innocent, playful. In the first love duet, they're chasing each other around a garden. Bet you can't catch me. If I catch you, can I kiss you? Singing silly little songs that they've made up to sing to each other. 80-year-old Verdi, after a lifetime of grown-up, heavy, doomed, tragic, joyless love affairs, says goodbye to romantic love by showing sweet, playful, innocent children. Here they are scampering around a garden. Still think there are no melodies in Falstaff, do you? Say, well, there's three, but other than that, what is there? Oh, let's keep going. In Act 2, Scene 2, Ford, Alice's jealous husband, he is Othello and Falstaff kind of represent those theater masks that we think of, one frowning for tragedy, the other laughing for comedy, because they both have jealous husbands. The tragic jealous husband, Othello, who's going to murder his wife that he thinks has cheated on him. And then Ford is the comic jealous husband, the cuckold that all Italians think is the funniest thing in the world. Well, when Ford discovers that Falstaff is after his wife, he goes and pays him a visit in disguise to kind of a little reconnaissance information gathering mission. And in disguise, he makes friends with Falstaff, and the two of them are singing about the vagaries of love and how cruel love can be. A little baritone duet that is, highly melodic. Now, I've got a couple more examples of the embarrassment of riches of melodic content in this wonderful opera to share with you, and they also show other aspects, as some of these others have as well. Alice doesn't get a soliloquy and she doesn't get an aria, and yet she's my favorite Verdi soprano. She's on stage a lot. She's got a lot of dialogue, and it's not the boring recitative with harpsichord underneath. She has little snatches of melody. None of them are long enough to be considered solos or arias. And what's wonderful about Alice is that she is the most human of all of Verdi's heroines. You know, Aida, the two Leonoras, Amelia, a lot of these sopranos, they're like characters in fairy tales. The princess who is utterly pure, who cares only about her man, for whom she would die, for whom she would do anything. And again, you never think of them as being very fun on a date. Alice Ford is a flesh and blood, three-dimensional person who is as real as any character in fiction can be. Ladies, if you knew Alice, you would want her to be your girlfriend you go shopping with and have lunch with. Men, when you get to know Alice, she's got this twinkle in her eye. She's practical. She's smart. She's down to earth. She doesn't suffer fools gladly. She's a lot of fun. She's a great mother to her daughter Nanetta, who was the young girl in love. And she is that proverbial great woman who stands behind the husband, making him a great man. She's a wonderful housewife and mother. And we get that sense of the twinkle in her eye when she sings. Here she is leading the other women of Windsor in the scheme to teach old Falstaff a lesson. Now, even if you don't know the words to the text that she was singing there, what does that music tell you about Alice? Don't you get it, that she's vivacious, that she's bubbly, that she's likable? You absolutely do. It comes shining through every time she opens her mouth. She's as great a character in her way as Falstaff is, because she's so real, much more real than Aida, as much as we all love the Egyptian princess. How about a tenor aria? But I love those tenor arias in Verdi's operas. Okay, you get a tenor aria. And actually, this is an aria. Don't tell me there are no arias. There are at least two in Falstaff. Fenton, the boyfriend, he's going to have a moment on stage alone at the top of Act 3, the final scene, in which he's going to be mooning and dreaming about that girl, Nanetta, who he is going to be marrying in just a few moments. Yes, it is a lovely melody. Now, it doesn't sound like a Verdi. If you didn't know what this was, you might not guess it was Verdi. Because a lot of Verdi's tenor arias are very testosterone infused. They are manly. La donna è mobile di quella pia. They sound barrel-chested. Here is a young man who's more dreamy, who's more romantic, but it's still a beautiful melody. That's an opera aria that is approaching art song, in my opinion. Now, so listen, and are those all the melodies? No. I've shown you the tippy, tip of the iceberg. It is 2 hours of music that is nothing but chains of micro melodies paper-clipped together in rapid-fire fashion. It's a machine gun volley of rat-a-tat-tat-tat-tat of endless melody. It's there. And the more you learn this opera, the more you become familiar with it, your ears adjust to that pace and you start hearing them and you treasure each one as they come along. Now, not just melody is what makes this wonderful. Verdi in his late 70s and up to age 80, he's still learning, still developing, still honing his craft, still improving. The biggest area of craftsmanship, musically speaking, in which Verdi improved was orchestration. Verdi, in his younger years, was not really, exactly a Tchaikovsky or Rimsky-Korsakov when it comes to manipulating the orchestra. It tended to be fairly basic. He is often criticized for having papa accompaniments, the big guitar, they call it, where the orchestra does little more than play basic accompaniment patterns as if you were strumming a guitar. For instance, here's Azucena's Stride la Vampa in Il Trovatore. Listen to the orchestra here. All right. Now look, there's nothing wrong with that type of accompaniment pattern, but if one gets the sense that the composer isn't capable of ranging far above that or of having loud tutis playing diminished chords for drama, we would like to hear a little bit more color and variety. Well, let's turn to Falstaff. What has he learned? There's a moment in Act 3, the first scene, in which Falstaff has been the butt of the first of two practical jokes, which landed him with a dunking in the Thames River. He's sitting in front of his hangout, the Garter Inn. He's sodden. He is soaked to the bone. He's chilled. He's shivering, and he's angry at the world. Mondo ladro, he says, thieving world, naughty world, mondo rubaldo. And to lift his spirits, he asks the innkeeper for a glass of steaming hot spiced mulled wine. And if you've ever been in that situation, you are frozen to the bone and you start drinking a little hot grog of some kind or hot wine, you know how it feels when it starts hitting your bloodstream and you get that tingle in your throat, that tingle in your belly, and pretty soon your whole body is tingling delightfully. As Falstaff describes the effects of how his body feels as this wine hits his system, Listen to the orchestra. We start with a little trill in the flute, a solo flute. You know what a trill is. Doodle, 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 back and forth rapidly. And then the rest of the woodwinds. And one by one, all the other families of the orchestra until finally he's buzzing, his body is vibrating with alcohol, and the entire orchestra is engaged in a mammoth trill. Brilliant orchestration.
Quel del piccol fabbro dei trilli, un negro grillo che vibra entro l'ombrillo, trillo di fibra in cor, l'allegro etere al trillo guizza, e il giocondo globo squilibra la demenza trillante, e il grillo invade il mondo.
Just don't drink and drive, Falstaff. Get yourself a designated driver. We've all felt that way at times. Now, another example, and listen carefully to the orchestration here because it's magical. In the final scene, Act 3, Scene 2, Falstaff is being lured out for what he thinks will be a hot date at midnight in the Royal Park under a giant oak tree, and Alice will be there, and they will suck face all night long. But what he doesn't know is that he's very superstitious. There's a legend that at midnight, all the witches and elves and fairies and demons of the forest will gather and, torture any mortal that they find. And he's very superstitious. He believes this. And wouldn't you know, the town of Windsor is all going to be disguised as supernatural beings of the night. And they will descend on him and torture him and poke him and kick him and so forth. And just after the stroke of midnight, he hears an eerie, far-off voice, and he starts to see stirrings as these creatures slowly emerge. Now listen how the orchestra creates this ethereal, enchanting, yet a little bit creepy, supernatural atmosphere using the orchestra. Now, I'm pausing the music. We're going to go right on from that moment because at that point, Nanetta appears as the queen of the fairies, and she's going to sing, yes, an aria, Giuseppe Verdi's final soprano aria, his farewell to sopranos on this earth after a lifetime of, oh my goodness, think of all of the Caro Nome and Ritorna Vincitor and all of the great soprano arias that he created. This is his final one. And again, it is sweet and innocent and delicate. It's the teenage girl dressed as a fairy princess, as all teenage girls dream of being. The orchestra supports her. It is a continuation of this magical evocation of supernatural forest creatures, and it shows off a light soprano voice just to perfection. So you can see we are light years removed from the era and the style of the big guitar with the orchestra going pa, pa. A most colorful, he's now the master of the orchestra in his late period. And orchestration almost applies to the choral writing as well. I like to say that think of the old-fashioned Verdi choruses like the Anvil chorus, where it's hearty, it's peasant-like, it's like a folk song. Verdi is exploring the choral vocabulary as well. And when all of those demons and imps and fairies and witches descend on Falstaff, surrounding him, pinching him, kicking him, how would you set this to music? The variety of colors that he gets here, it really is kind of like orchestrating the chorus. Thinking of the different woodwinds, you'll hear woodwinds and percussion and all sorts of orchestral effects in the choral writing. And I also want you to listen to the orchestra. The orchestra becomes a character. Just as Falstaff cries out in terror, sometimes the orchestra cries out in terror too, with those high violins and piccolos. The orchestra is as terrified as Falstaff is. Here is a remarkably virtuosic bit of both choral orchestration and instrumental orchestration. That is amazingly difficult. If that sounds easy to sing, then you've never tried it, because at that point the chorus is generally dancing around in circles. That is so risky to perform. It requires masterful conducting. Unfortunately, Maestro Joe Rescigno is just the guy to keep all of us together as we get to scenes like that. Now, I want to close today's preview by showing you another example of Verdi's ability to mock his former style, self-parody. And this is about as brilliant as genius gets, in my opinion. There is a convention of old-fashioned operas, old-fashioned melodramas. We're all familiar with it. You know the scene. It's the scene in which there's a big concerted ensemble with the chorus, all the minor characters, the major principal characters. They're all on stage at a moment of confrontation. Two enemies are on stage together, and the chorus is going, "Oh no, what will happen?" And everything stops. And for 5, 6, 7, maybe 10 minutes, they sing this long, involved, intricate number in which the guys are maybe saying, "Any second now, I will kill that man. I will run him through with my sword. His blood will flow. Yes, I shall kill him. He shall taste the hot steel of my blade. Oh, my rage. I will kill him. Kill him I will." And what are you in the audience thinking as the minutes roll by and we hear the B section of the choral ensemble? You're thinking, for the love of Mike, just do it. Verdi's not the only one to make fun of this. Sir Arthur Sullivan and W.S. Gilbert in Pirates of Penzance, there's a choral number in which the police are saying, "We go, we go, we go, we go, we go," marching around, and the Major General Stanley finally says, "Yes, but you don't go." Well, Verdi was guilty of this. They all are. That's what the sextet in Lucia di Lammermoor is. Time freezes so that we can have an elaborate choral number with solos in which they all talk about what they're going to do, and they don't do it. Verdi's happened in Il Trovatore, at least the best example. in a big climactic scene, the Count de Luna is about to abduct Leonora just as she's on her way to a convent because she can't marry Manrico, when suddenly Manrico shows up. And here are the two rivals, and they're both singing, "Oh, my rage, oh, I shall kill him." And Leonora is prettily going, "Oh, no, oh, dear, oh, my, oh, God." And we're just frustrated because they're talking about it and they don't do it. And on and on and on. Now, it's lovely music. We have to suspend our belief in reality so that we can enjoy the music. This is what Verdi decided. Verdi is saying to us, yeah, I know that's kind of baloney. I understand. Hey, it made me rich. I can't complain. But now in Falstaff, he's going to mock that by giving us a really over-the-top version. And bear with me here. This is a little tough to describe on radio. You really have to see it. But here's what's going on. Falstaff in Act 2, Scene 2, has shown up for his hot date with Alice. Alice, to set him up for a joke, has said, "Oh, yes, big boy, my husband is away at 2 o'clock, between 2 and 3. Come right over. Woohoo." And so here's Falstaff, and just as he's about to plant a wet one on Alice's lips, comes the disturbing news that Ford, her husband, has discovered about this date, and he's on his way with his posse, and he's going to tear them both limb from limb. Oh dear, we must hide. Falstaff ducks behind a screen. Alice makes herself scarce. Meg and Paige and Quickly are there to intercept the boys, and they start tearing the place upside down. Bardolph, Pistol, Dr. Caius, Ford, and a bunch of men of the village, they're turning the place upside down, including an old laundry hamper in the corner, a large wicker basket. They head down to the wine cellar, I guess, to see if they can find him, and Meg and Quickly take the opportunity to tell Falstaff to hide here. They've already looked in the laundry basket. Climb in there, and we'll put the lid down. Now, the laundry basket is filled with a week's worth of dirty underwear. But what choice does he have? And in the meantime, with all of this helter-skelter business going on, who wanders in, oblivious to the grown-ups, but young Fenton, and Nanetta, the teenage lovers. They go behind that very same screen, and when Ford and his posse return to see where else they can look for that rascal Falstaff and his cheating wife, they hear from behind the screen a great big, the sound of a kiss. Everything stops. At this moment begins the most brilliant single musical ensemble that I know. There are 3 things going on. First of all, you'll hear Ford and his cronies going, "Ah, there they are. Oh, I'll crush you. Oh, I'll thrash you. Oh, I'll beat you," standing in front of this screen, instead of course, just tearing the screen down and seeing who's there. This goes on for some time. Ford whispering to the guys saying, "You men, flank me on the right. You men, take the left guard," making elaborate plans as if for D-Day. While over in the corner, Falstaff is suffocating under this mound of dirty linen, poking his head up, going, "Oh, I'm dying. Give me an air hole," while Meg and Quickly are muttering, "Oh, dear, this is not going too well. This could end very badly. Oh, my goodness." And in the meantime, behind the screen, the 2 young lovers, just wallowing in puppy love, are crooning sweet nothings to each other. And you and I, one of the things I often say about opera is that it can reflect point of view. When Falstaff was singing about the wine and you heard that big trill, That was music in the first person. We were experiencing what Falstaff was experiencing. That was music in the first person, inside Falstaff's skin, as it were. Now, this is a different point of view. During this incredible comic masterpiece of an ensemble, we are omniscient. We are like God. Verdi turns you and I into God. We are looking down at this tableau, the men whispering their endless threats of "I'll thrash you, I'll kill you, I'll draw and quarter you," and so forth. The fat old knight hiding in the corner, trying not to die of disgust from all the dirty underwear and the lack of oxygen, and the lovers behind the screen. We're looking down at all of them, and we're just regarding human folly and human weakness and smiling at all of it and realizing that what really counts is what those two young people have behind that screen. Their sweet voices rising over all of the human stupidity. It is the greatest do-nothing ensemble ever created.
Falstaff con mia moglie sta sotto per questi si sorge se l'altro mi scorge sei morto sta sotto ragioniamo.
turns out it wasn't Falstaff behind that screen. To everyone's surprise and to Ford's horror, it's that stupid boyfriend of his daughter's who he can't stand. You again? Now, unless you try to create a scene like that, you can't appreciate, or perhaps you can, the virtuosity of the composition. I hope you noticed that during all of that, the texture was crystal clear. You could hear all three layers going on. He keeps the plates spinning like in those old Ed Sullivan acts. Keeps the balls juggling in the air. You hear the lovers behind the screen. You hear the men with their stupid military planning and their threats and their schemes. And you hear Falstaff moaning in discomfort in the laundry basket, and the two neighbor ladies telling him to, for God's sake, keep your head down. He's going to kill you, and so forth. It all comes through, and yet those disparate elements all mesh together like the gears of a well-designed machine, and it hums along, and it's funny, it's brilliant, and it's crystal clear at all times. It's as good as opera gets. That is as good as opera gets. There's more to opera than lengthy arias and melodies, but again, Falstaff has all of it. It's got tunes, it's got arias, it's got brilliant orchestration, it's got the best libretto ever. It's a comedy that actually makes you laugh out loud. And please come to this wonderful production that will open Friday night at the Harrison Opera House. You will never forget it. I'm Glenn Winters. It's been my pleasure to bring this preview of my favorite opera to your attention. I'll see you at the opera.